If you're trying to build muscle and get stronger, you need to have a system that ensures that you progress over time. Because most people that go to the gym actually have no idea how to make consistent progress over time. Help busy people lose fat, build muscle, and transform their bodies. And in this episode, I'm going to teach you about the exact system that we use with our clients to help them build muscle consistently over time. We're going to cover the concept of progressive overload and why it matters, and how to use a system called dynamic double progression to get better results from your workouts. Let's get right into it. What's up, beautiful people? I hope you're all having an absolutely wonderful day. I realized I haven't made an episode talking about a training related topic in quite some time. And today I really wanted to talk about the concept of progression in your training and how to have a simple system that allows you to know when it's an appropriate time to increase either weight or repetitions in your workouts so that you can consistently make progress over time and so that progress is also predictable. And the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because some of our clients at Fit for Life Academy were asking about this quite frequently recently. And it's a question that comes up often, but it's been coming up a little bit more than normal as of recent. The question of like, should I go up in weight? How do I know if I should increase the weights in my workouts? How many reps should I be doing? All of that good stuff. And the reason why I think people have these questions, well, for a number of reasons, right? I think we all understand that progress is important and that we have to increase weight over time and repetitions if we want to get stronger, but we don't know how to do it in a systematic way, or we don't really know when it's an appropriate time to do so. So those are the main topics that we're going to be discussing here on today's episode. I'm going to talk about the importance of progressive overload, what progressive overload is in the first place, and then we're going to get into the topic of dynamic double progression, which is the specific progression model that we like to use with clients at Fit for Life Academy to help them build muscle in a consistent and sustainable fashion. With that said, before we get into the episode, if you are a regular listener of the podcast, I would really appreciate if you take a second to rate and review the show on whatever podcast platform you're listening to this on, whether it's Apple or Spotify or whatnot. It really does help me a ton. It helps me reach more people. And if you leave a review, it helps me understand what you're liking and maybe what you're not liking so I can tailor my content so it's more suitable for you. Thank you. With that being said, let's go ahead and get right into the episode. So the first thing we need to talk about is the concept of progressive overload, which you might have heard of before, but it's simply this idea that we need to do more over time if you want to continue progressing with your training, right? So more can mean a number of things. It can mean more repetitions. It could mean more weight. It could mean making an exercise more difficult, slowing down, increasing the range of motion, but more simply means that your workouts need to become more difficult over time. Right now, some of these variables have limitations. In general, what we're looking at is increasing weight and repetitions over time. And the reason why this is important is because our body adapts to whatever stimulus we're placing on it, right? If today doing 10 repetitions of a back squat with 135 pounds feels difficult, if you simply continue doing that over time, it won't feel difficult anymore, right? What used to feel like a grind will feel pretty easy. And if what you're doing is feeling pretty easy, then it's not providing a sufficient stimulus to cause your body to adapt and grow, right? So again, the reason why it's important to make sure that we're increasing weights, increasing repetitions over time is because our bodies adapt to the stimulus that's being placed upon it, right? And when I use the word stimulus, I'm just talking about the specific workout that you're doing. Your body adapts to it. It's no longer difficult. If it's no longer difficult, it's not really causing your body to adapt further. And if you want to continue building muscle, you need to continue adapting, right? So we need to increase that stimulus. We need to increase the stress that we're placing on the body. So this concept of progressive overload is kind of like a non-negotiable. If you want to build muscle, you have to consistently progress your training in order to build muscle. Now, the problem is that most people understand that progressive overload is important, but they don't know how to implement it. They don't know when to progress, right? They have questions like, should I increase my weights next workout? Should I increase my reps next workout? What if I'm not feeling stronger? Should I max out? How do I know if I should increase my weights or my reps? Does it matter, right? And so there's a lot of confusion, which just leads to random workouts. This week I used 100 pounds. Next week I used 110 pounds, but my reps went down. And there's this randomness in training, so we don't really know whether or not we're actually progressing from week to week and month to month. So what I want to share with you guys here is a simple way to make sure that we're progressing, and not just to make sure we're progressing, to make sure that we are intentionally implementing progressive overload into our training to get the best stimulus from our training and make sure that we're building muscle. So the first thing I want to discuss is the concept of rep ranges instead of having set reps for your exercises, right? Most people go into the gym and they'll say something like, I'm going to do a 3x10, or I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 repetitions on this exercise. So there's a fixed number of repetitions that they're aiming for instead of a range of repetitions. And in general, I am a much bigger fan of having a set rep range as your target rather than a specific number of repetitions for each exercise. And this is what I mean. Instead of saying, I'm going to do 3 sets of 10 repetitions with 135 pounds on the back squat, it's better to aim for 3 sets of 8 to 10 repetitions on the barbell back squat, right? And the reason why this is important is for a number of reasons. First and foremost, if you are doing the same number of repetitions for multiple sets on an exercise, you're likely leaving a lot of gas in the tank. If you do 10 repetitions on your first set, and then you're able to do another 10 repetitions on your second set, and then another 10 repetitions on your third set, you probably could have pushed yourself a little bit harder on the first set. Maybe you could have gotten 11, 12, maybe 13 repetitions, and you stopped yourself shy of that because you have this idea in your head that you need to stop at 10 repetitions for some arbitrary reason, right? So having a range, let's say 8 to 10 or 8 to 12, gives you more flexibility in terms of the number of reps that you're going to perform, and it's not so fixed. And it's better because if you keep the intensity high, aka you're training hard and you're close to failure on most of your sets, then those repetitions are going to fluctuate. You should not be able to do the same number of repetitions for multiple sets if you're pushing yourself hard enough with your training, right? The reps should naturally decrease. The second reason is that it gives you a rep target or range to play with when it comes to progression, right? If you are aiming for 8 to 12 repetitions, and on this first week you did 135 pounds, and on your first set you did 10 repetitions, then on your second set you do 9 repetitions, then on your third set, you hit 8 repetitions because you're getting tired and fatigued. Well, now you have a range that you want to work within, right? It's like now next week, maybe instead of doing 10 on my first set, I want to try to hit 11. Instead of doing 9 on my second set, maybe I want to go ahead and try to hit 10, right? So you can see how having a range of repetitions just gives you a little bit more structure in terms of what to aim for and how to progress from week to week, which really takes us into this topic of dynamic double progression. Dynamic double progression is simply the name for the system that we like to use to help clients strategically and methodically increase weight, increase repetitions, and ensure that they're implementing progressive overload and building muscle over time. Okay, so the first thing I want to outline here is that the term dynamic double progression means the following things. First off, double progression, meaning that we're looking at 2 variables. Okay, so we're going to be looking at reps and weight as separate variables. Okay, and I bring this up because most times when people are like, again, if you have a fixed number of repetitions, and let's say you're going to do 3 sets of 10 repetitions, and you're doing that with, again, 135 pounds, if you bump up the weight next week to 140 pounds, you still have this idea that you need to do 3x10, and you might be able to do it, but then when you bump it up to 145 pounds, it's going to get to the point where you can't do 3 sets of 10 repetitions, right? And that's where people get confused, and they're like, well, I increased my weight, but my reps went down. Is that good or bad? Is that right or wrong? And it's neither good or bad, and it's not right or wrong. It's just that it lacks context and nuance. So we want to look at weight and repetitions as 2 separate variables that we're trying to progress over time, right? And then dynamic simply means that we're going to treat these variables independently across sets. So set 1, set 2, set 3 are going to be treated independently. It's dynamic, it's moving, okay? And I know that sounds a little bit confusing, but I'm going to explain what I mean here in a second. So again, we're going to treat each set independently, and we are going to treat reps and weight as 2 separate variables that we are trying to progress over time. So let's talk about this practically so it makes more sense. Again, let's use the example of a barbell back squat. And let's say you start off with 135 pounds, and you're training within the rep range of 8 to 12 repetitions. Okay? Let's say your first week, on your first set, you did 11 repetitions. On your second set, you only get 10 repetitions. And on your third set, you're pretty tired, so you only get 8 repetitions. Okay? So the question is, what the hell do we do next week? Do we increase weight or do we not increase weight? Well, again, dynamic double progression, we're trying to increase both weight and reps over time, and we're treating each set independently. So this is exactly what it means. So all 3 sets that you did were within the 8 to 12 rep range, right? You did 11 reps, 10 reps, and then 8 reps. However, you did not hit the upper end of the rep range, which is 12 reps, right? Because we're targeting 8 to 12 reps. You didn't hit the upper end of the rep range on any of the sets. You did not do 12 repetitions on any of your sets, which means that you shouldn't increase weight for the following week. You should keep the weight the same. You should keep it at 135 pounds because you have still not hit 12 repetitions on any of the sets, right? So let's say now you come into next week and you maintain the same 135 pounds. And now on the first set, you hit 12 repetitions. On your second set, you hit 11 repetitions. And now on your third set, you hit 9 repetitions, right? So what do we do for the following week? Well, now you actually hit 12 repetitions on a particular set, which was your first set. In general, your first set is always going to be your best performing set because you're fresh, right? So if you hit 12 repetitions on that first set, that means that you should increase weight. But remember earlier I said dynamic, meaning that we're going to treat each set independently. You're not going to increase the weight for all of your sets. So next time you come in, like whether you add 5 pounds or 10 pounds, let's say you go up to 140 pounds or 145 pounds, you're not going to use that weight for all 3 sets. You're simply going to use that heavier weight for the first set, since the first set is the only set that you hit the 12 repetitions on in the previous week at 135 pounds. Remember, we did 135 for 11 reps, 10 reps, and then 9 reps across the 3 sets. So the following week, let's say you bump it up to 145 pounds, you will use 145 pounds for your first set, and then you will go back down to 135 pounds for set 2 and set 3, right? So now let's say you do that, and you bumped up the weight to 145 pounds. Since that is a heavier weight, your reps are naturally going to go down. Let's say you only do 8 repetitions on that first set with 145 pounds. Then you bump the weight back down to 135 pounds. And now you hit that for 12 repetitions on your second set. And then on your third set, you only hit 10 repetitions at the 135 pounds, right? So now you did 145 pounds on your first set for 8 repetitions, 135 pounds for 12 repetitions on your second set, and then 135 pounds for 10 repetitions on your third set. You're probably getting the rhythm here and understanding what's coming up next week, right? So next week, the weight for the first set stays the same at 145 pounds because you only did 8 repetitions. You didn't hit the upper end of the rep range, 12 reps. On your second set at 135 pounds, now you did hit the 12 repetitions, which means that for that second set, you're going to bump up the weight to 145 as well. And now on the third set, you're still not at the 12 repetitions at 135 pounds. So that's going to stay at 135 pounds. And that upcoming week, you're going to do 145 pounds for your first set, for your second set, and then drop down to 135 pounds for that last set. So you can see how this model allows for flux in terms of what weight you're using on different sets, how many repetitions you're performing, treating each set independently, but it still provides sufficient structure for you to know exactly whether or not you're progressing and when to increase weight over time. So that's the whole concept of dynamic double progression. So to quickly summarize that, we're trying to progress both in terms of repetitions and in terms of weight. We're going to treat each set completely independently. So whether you're doing 2 sets, 3 sets, 4 sets, 5 sets, it really doesn't matter. Each set is treated completely independently. And we're trying to progress the repetitions on each set. And we only increase the weight when we hit the upper end of the rep range, right? So hopefully that makes sense. I know that's a lot of jargon there in talking about numbers. And hopefully I didn't mess up any of my numbers when I was talking about it earlier. But hopefully that makes sense. Now, I want to talk about a couple of nuances here. Okay. First and foremost, I think it's important to have to train across different rep ranges. The way that I personally like to implement this into my training is that my first exercise for the day is always my heaviest. My second exercise is a little bit lighter. My third exercise is a little bit lighter than that. So my first exercise, I might be training in the 4 to 6 rep range. Then I might be training in the 8 to 10 rep range for the second set. And then the second exercise, right? So the first exercise, if I do 2 or 3 sets, all 3 of those are in the 4 to 6 rep range. For my second exercise, if I do 2 or 3 sets, all 3 of those sets are in the 8 to 10 rep range. And then my third exercise will be in like the 12 to 15 rep range, right? And I do that because I think it's beneficial to train across different rep ranges, and it keeps training fun as well, right? Because if you just train in one particular rep range and every exercise is that same rep range, whether it's really heavy or really light, there's kind of overuse of that rep range. It can get stale, it can get boring, right? And so I think it's important to train across different rep ranges and implement the same progressive overload or dynamic double progression model for all 3 rep ranges, or for all 4 rep ranges, or across the different rep ranges that you're going to be using. The rep ranges that you select are fairly arbitrary. It doesn't really mean a ton. I just, in general, like training across different rep ranges for different exercises in the same workout, because I get the best of both worlds type of thing, right? Like most bang for your buck, training within heavy rep ranges and light rep ranges across one workout. I just really enjoy it. Again, a lot of this stuff, there's some science to it, there's some art to it, and then it also matters that you just implement the stuff that you enjoy. But I've found that doing so helps with progress a ton, because again, I'm training the same muscles across different rep ranges, and 2, it just keeps things fun. Now, the other thing I really want to mention that is an important nuance here is that when you use this dynamic double progression model, it's easy to always want to just progress on that first set, right? Because it's the first set, you're fresh, but you're not going to be able to hit an extra repetition or add 5 pounds every single week on your first set. So I really encourage you to look at progress across the reps, right? And the more advanced you become in training, the slower this is going to be. So in general, with my training at the moment, I try to make sure that I just do 1 extra rep every week on one of the 3 sets, right? So for example, if this week on the bench press, I'm using about 265 pounds, which is what I'm currently using on my heavy sets of 4 to 6, and I do, let's say, 5 repetitions on my first set, or let's say I do 5 repetitions on my first set, I do 4 repetitions on my second set, and I do 4 repetitions on my third set. I will intentionally not try to go for 6 repetitions on that first set. Or that's not true. I might, but if I do 5 repetitions and it still feels really heavy, I will stop there and then try to do 5 repetitions on my second set, right? So if I go from 5-4-4 to 5-5-4, that's progress. So I'm not looking at progress just based off the best performance or just my performance on my first set. I'm really looking at it across the 3 sets, right? For example, at the moment, on my incline bench press, I have kept the weight and reps on the first set pretty stable for about 3 or 4 weeks now. And let me explain why. So on the incline bench press right now, I'm training in the 6 to 8 rep range. And I was using 175 pounds on all 3 of my sets. And I finally hit the 8 repetitions on that first set, right? So I did 175 pounds for 8 repetitions. So I bumped up the weight to 185 pounds on just the first set. But my second and third set on the 175 pounds still haven't hit the 8 repetitions, right? So I bumped up the weight on the first set to 185 repetitions, and I did 185 pounds, and I've performed 6 repetitions on that, right? So then my second set and my third set, I've still just been doing about 6 reps because it feels heavy because there's fatigue from that first set. So instead of trying to go for 7 reps and 8 reps at 185 pounds, I've just been telling myself I'm gonna hit the 6 repetitions on 185 pounds, and I'm gonna progress set 2 and set 3, right? So I've gone from doing 6 reps at 185 pounds on the first set, and then 6 reps on the second and third set at 175 pounds, to then going 6 reps at 185 on the first set, and now 7 reps on the second set, 6 reps on the third set with the 175 pounds. And then going 7 and 7 on set 2 and set 3. And then trying to go for 8 and 7. And then 8 and 8. And then bump up the weight from there accordingly. So you don't always have to go for a PR on that first set. And what I encourage you to do is look at your performance across all 3, 4, 5 sets, however many sets you're doing. And if that first set still feels challenging, try to bump up the repetitions on the subsequent sets before you try to go for a PR on that first set always. Okay, so look at progress across all of the sets rather than just looking at progress as like, did I add 5 pounds to the bar? Did I do an extra rep on my top set? Because that's how most people look at progress, and you won't be able to progress that top set always consistently every single week. So hopefully that helps. And the last nuance that I want to add here is that training gets stale. You will hit quote unquote plateaus. Although I think people exaggerate how quickly they hit a plateau. It's just the fact that training progress tends to slow down significantly over time. What I would encourage you to do is, if you really hit a plateau, and I would define a plateau by not seeing progress on any of your sets across 3 or 4 weeks, right? 3 or 4 workouts. And keep in mind, like, if you are in a deficit and you are losing weight, this is bound to happen. But if you're at maintenance or slightly gaining weight and you're really in a building phase and you're seeing like progress stall on a particular exercise, then what I would encourage you to do is either change up the rep range for that particular exercise for a month or 2, or change up the exercise you're doing for that particular rep range. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. So if I do the barbell bench press as my heavy movement for 4 to 6 reps, and then I move on to an incline bench press for 6 to 8 reps or 8 to 10 reps, and then I do some dumbbell press for 12 to 15 reps, right? Those are my 3 exercises that I'm doing across the different rep ranges. I will just rotate those, right? So the dumbbell press now becomes my heavy movement, let's say 4 to 6. My barbell bench press now becomes my intermediate movement, let's say 8 to 10. And now the incline press becomes my lighter movement of 12 to 15, right? That's what I would do if I wanted to change up the entire workout and change up the rep ranges for all 3 exercises. Quick comment here, I don't do that frequently. I actually rarely do that. I only do that if I've gotten super bored of my current training routine, and that literally doesn't happen for months on end. So I'm a big fan of keeping things very consistent. But what I might do more frequently is change up the rep range on one particular exercise, or just change that exercise altogether. So if I see that I'm stalling, actually, I've done this practically on my pull-ups recently. I was training in the 8 to 10 rep range for the wide grip pull-up, and for about 4 weeks, I just wasn't progressing on there. And I don't think it's because I hit a plateau like physically. I think it's sometimes we hit mental plateaus too, where it's like, man, doing 8 to 10 reps on this wide grip pull-up, like it's not exciting anymore, so I don't bring the energy, so the focus isn't there and the intensity isn't there. Let me switch up the rep range a little bit to keep it fun. So I dropped it down to 6 to 8 rep range. Now I increased the weight a little bit. It's just fun. It's a novel stimulus, slightly novel stimulus, because I'm using a little bit of heavier weight and I'm progressing there again, right? I'm sure in 2-3 months, I will stall out there from a mental perspective and maybe drop it a little bit and go back into a higher rep range. An alternate would be to keep the rep range the same and just substitute the exercise. So maybe instead of a wide grip pull-up, I'll do a neutral grip pull-up, right? So that is essentially how I incorporate some variety into this dynamic double progression model by switching up rep ranges or switching up the exercise selection when progress starts to slow down or stall on a particular exercise. But again, the caveat here is like, do not do that super frequently. As a beginner, we tend to want to switch up exercises, switch things up really frequently, and that slows down progress. That actually prevents you from progressing a ton. I'm a big fan of keeping stuff consistent for as long as possible. Like, I typically don't make many changes to my training, maybe once every like 4 to 6 months. And when I say once, I might switch up like 1 or 2 exercises, right? And maybe rep ranges on like 1 or 2 other exercises. So keep things consistent for as long as possible. So to quickly recap this episode, guys, progressive overload is incredibly important. We need to make sure that we are progressing over time, increasing weights, getting stronger. If not, you're not going to be making progress in the gym. If you're using the same weight and same reps you were a year ago, you haven't built much muscle whatsoever. People have confusion in terms of how to do this. Again, a big part of this, I think, is because we try to aim for straight sets, same number of reps, a 3x10, for example. If we increase the weight, we think we still have to do a 3x10. We obviously can't do that because the reps decrease when you increase weight. It becomes confusing, and that's where this dynamic double progression model comes in. Again, we treat each set independently, and then we treat reps and weight as 2 variables that we're trying to progress simultaneously. We don't increase weight until we hit the upper end of the rep range that we select for that particular exercise. And then we only increase weight on the specific sets where we've hit the upper end of the rep range. We don't increase weight for all sets across the board. So hopefully this episode has been super helpful and practical and tactical, and you've picked up a couple things that you can implement into your own training to make sure that you're progressing, building muscle, and getting jacked. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, if you're a regular listener, I would really appreciate if you rate and review the show. And on your review, just let me know what you thought about the episode and what you enjoyed. I do read every single one of them, so it's nice to see those reviews come in. With that being said, I'll catch you on next week's episode. Peace.